All right. Hello, hello. My name is Linda Peterson here with my amazing husband, Andrew Brown. And welcome to the Real Estate Investing for the Win webinar series. Today, we will be covering wholesales, right? So it is a great way to get into real estate investing. It has low risk, can be a faster turnaround time compared to other avenues, especially commercial, as we're seeing right now. And so you can get not as much money, but a good amount of return for your money. And the more you can create that engine, the more you can get. So it's a great place to start. We have some, I think what will be some funny, engaging stories of some case studies as Andrew and I remember the details of these. We find you can't just make up some of these stories. You have to live them or hear other people's stories about them. So as we said in this session, we'll talk about how to wholesale a residential property, how to find the seller and the buyer, plus some case studies. So in detail, what we're going to cover is what is a wholesale? Start with the basics, right? How are wholesales done? And finding sellers, finding buyers, and wholesale case studies. Might include some ninja tips along the way. Hey, yeah. So at a super high level, this is the boring stuff, right? What is a wholesale, right? Andrew, before I put my bullets on the screen, why don't you tell us how you would define a wholesale? And just so you guys know, Andrew and I think very differently, which we are often entertained by the way each other thinks. So how would you define a wholesale, Andrew?
To me, a wholesale is simply you do the work, you go and find the property, but before you really do much of anything on it, you sell it to someone else.
Exactly. I agree.
Wow.
Right? But
Are
it's
you
the
feeling okay?
details. It's the details that matter, right? So getting a property under contract and assigning it to an end buyer without purchasing the property. Shazam. So Andrew, how does this differ from being the realtor on the deal?
The realtor gets paid at the closing on a property, whereas this is not closing. It's assigning the contract to someone else. So realtors can be involved, but generally they're not.
Yeah. And I mean, you can wholesale a deal that's on MLS, right? And just recognize part of the difference, in my opinion, as well, is that when you are the one under contract, you are in control. And what you make on it is not limited to a commission.
So here's the way I'm picturing this, seeing as we're coming
Okay.
into the holiday season.
Okay.
They announce this super special deal at Walmart. Everybody goes crazy. They break down the doors. They knock over the security guys and the poor old guy trying to greet everybody. And everybody runs, and there's one big TV left that's selling for like half what it's really worth. And you, as the wholesaler, are the one who gains control of that TV. And you beat off everybody else in a kind, gentle way because it's Christmas. And you have control of that TV. And before you get to the register and pay for it, you actually sell it to someone else. You say, here, this TV is going to cost $500. Give me $100 and I'll give it to you. And then they get it. That's wholesaling.
Yeah.
All right, we're
Completely
done. No
agree.
more webinar. We're done. We can go.
Yeah, and I think the biggest part here is knowing the one that you're in control of the contract, right? Whereas some realtors, right, are at the mercy of, the buyer and the seller and what they agree on. So how does this differ from a double close?
Are you asking me?
Or, yeah.
You're not closing. You're not closing through a title company. You're assigning the contract to someone else.
So yeah, so you are, I guess an easy way to say is you're selling your position on the piece of paper, right? You're signing your contract. And two ways that we've seen this done several times, and as Andrew said, you're not doing the work on the house, right? You're finding the seller, you're finding the buyer, and you're assigning your position in the contract. So you can get paid out of closing, just like a realtor, but you're not limited to a commission. A double close means that it has to be bought and then turn around and be sold. And I would say that both are wholesales if you're not doing the work on the property. But the biggest difference is that when you're signing the contract, both the buyer and the seller can see your assignment fee, right? Or your wholesale fee. When you're doing a double close, both transactions are completely separate. One can't see what the other did, and you can make money, as potentially bigger money in between. But that means that you actually have to purchase the property. So you have to have the funding for the property, because they don't really do, a lot of title companies shy away from
Double
uh,
close.
pull through. Yeah. So pull through funding, where I take the funding from the buyer and use that funding to pay
Yeah,
the
so
seller.
let's back up and explain that, because you threw the term double close out there. So double close is technically you go into a title company and you say, here's my contract to buy it. By the way, I'm already selling it to someone, and rather than have to do two closes, we're going to do them all together. And we're going to close on one. It happens in conjunction. They're together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, first of all, you need to check your state. It's actually not legal in all 50 states. I don't believe it's legal in all of them. I will tell you, we're here in Texas, and a lot of people will tell you it's not legal here in Texas. That's actually not true. It's more that most title companies don't want to do them. They don't enjoy them. Plus, they only get paid once.
Right.
So a double close is two closings happening at the same time, and they're kind of contingent upon each other. So that's what a double close is.
Yeah. And if you want to do a double close because you're making too much money, which is a great problem, then what you can do is get transactional funding, right? So there's a ton of hard money lenders that do transactional funding, which is they give you the money for a day, for a week, right? And it could be pretty high, like 1.75% of the total, but the dollar amount is, you have to factor in that number and still say, am I still making enough? Because if you make too much, then the seller might walk away when they see how much you're making, that they could be making, whether it's rational or not. And we've seen the same deal wholesaled multiple times, and it really comes from the buyer being able to see opportunities that the other people didn't. So for example, one person is wholesaling it as a residential, but then somebody else sees an opportunity that, no, I can tear it down, build two, right? Or I can even tear it down and build or convert it to commercial, right? Last week we just did a presentation on adaptive reuse, where Christian Controne, one of our amazing friends, they took a Best Buy, right? And because of the boom in the with boomers, right? And aging and need for medical, they converted it into 3 different suites for medical, such as pain, right? So now it's converting something that's retail and moving it into specialty, but broken down into a different use. So again, you can wholesale all of those things and not really take on the cost and risk of the entire deal, but connecting. So at a high level, that's wholesaling. So I wanted to throw this in. Your before and after pictures when you do a wholesale,
Right?
right? Basically, you're not doing anything to the property. You're just doing it on paper. So how are wholesales done? And Andrew, add in commentary as they come to you, right? So you need to make sure that your contract is actually assignable,
So,
right?
and again, just to make sure everybody knows how to do that, first of all, most real estate contracts are automatically assignable. Unless it says you cannot assign it, it's assignable. What we tend to do is put under the buyer, when we're putting it under contract, we'll put the name of our company, and then we'll put and/or assigns, which allows us to assign it to someone else. And there's different reasons we do that. For example, property we have under contract right now, we're keeping, but when we put it under contract, we weren't sure what we were going to do with it. We ended up creating a separate LLC for that piece of land. And
Mm-hmm.
now we're assigning it to that new LLC. So I would say anytime you're doing a contract, forget about wholesales. Anytime
Yeah.
you're doing a contract, to create flexibility for you because you never sure what's going to happen. I would always put buyer, put the name of whoever you're buying it under, and then put and or assigns, and it allows you to automatically assign the contract.
Agreed. Thank you. So in Texas, you can get the contracts right on Google. It's called TREC Forms, TREC, Texas Real Estate Commission. You're looking for the 1 to 4 family residential. Not every state has their own contracts. In states where you don't have your own contract, you need to work with an attorney to create one. In Texas, we have an option period. In other states, they have a contingency period. And this is when you can do your due diligence. And Andrew, how long should your due diligence period be, or how long can it be?
As long as you want, whatever you can get someone to accept. If
Yeah.
you're buying, you want the option period as long as possible. If you're selling, you want it as short as possible.
Yeah, and I will say what we've seen standard is if you're working through a realtor, they've got their expectations that your due diligence period or your option period or contingency period is a week, 2 weeks, right? But when you're working with a seller directly, I would say that you have to factor in the risk, right? When you're working with a seller directly, typically it's because they've got problems, big problems that you don't know if it can be solved. For example, we've had people call us up the night before they're going to be sold at auction, right? They're going to be foreclosed on, and we have no guarantees if the bank is going to work with us. But one little ninja tip that we learn is that even in that scenario, we extend the option period or the contingency period as long as possible because the bank could work with you and then move it, and you don't want your contract to be expired. And then also you have to put down your earnest money. So in Texas, you have to put down some money for option. If you're working through realtors, it's typically what, $10 a day. When you're working directly with a seller, it's whatever you can negotiate to be taken seriously, right? The standard is 500, but we, as I said, if we've got somebody the night before an auction and we don't know if the bank's going to cooperate with us, we're not going to put a bunch on the line because if it does get foreclosed on, good luck trying to chase them to get that money back after they've just been evicted from their house. So we've had homeowners where we put $10 down and they don't even cash it. They just put it on their fridge. Remember that?
Yep.
So the earnest money is typically 1%. But again, if you're working with a distressed seller, you're working directly with the seller, you're focused on solving their problem, it's whatever you agree on. And usually they're just focused on you solving their problem than the amount of money that you're putting at title because they don't see it anyway. So,
Well, and I want to hang on. Let's clarify this. So the option contingency, there's also option or contingency money. So in order to have an option period or contingency period, you're asked to pay for that. And similar to the earnest money, it can be as much or as little as you want. So as
yeah,
Linda said, it could be a percentage. It's enough for them to take your offer seriously. If you're in a highly competitive environment, which we've had here, Linda, do you remember what our record was for an option fee? And it was the house on Deer Run. Do you remember? So
the
we
option.
knew we were going to purchase the property. We already knew about the property. We
Oh,
knew
yeah.
everything we needed to know, and we
Yeah.
knew we were going to purchase it. And we didn't knew we and
Yeah.
don't
No,
do this. I'm going to warn you. Do not
do
do
not
this.
do this.
Because once you pay the option fee, that's it. That money's gone. You cannot get that back.
It's
So
live.
we knew we wanted it, and we knew we had all the background, all the history, everything we needed to know.
We knew the
I
buyer
want to
well.
say we wrote an option check for close to $100,000,
Don't
basically
do
for the
that.
price of the home.
Don't do that.
So you do whatever you need to do. You just got to make sure your money's safe.
Mhm.
And another example, and I don't know if this is one of the ones we're talking about today, we actually wrote it out for $10. And it was a house, it was rat infested, it was a horrible situation. And the family just needed to get out of the house. And we were having to work with them a lot with the banks and help them. And I wrote it out for $10. And then when we got there, we realized how bad of shape the family was in, and it involved grandkids, it involved them not having food. And I literally on the contract turned a 10 into a 400 and wrote her a check for $400 just so she'd have money for food.
Yeah.
So you can do as much or as little as you want there.
Yeah. And I've even I've even done the option period longer than the contract
Yeah.
because I had to at some point I did extend the contract. So and I still wanted to make sure I was in the option period.
Yep. Smart.
So execute the contract. So for us in Texas, we close by title companies. And so it's really whoever gets there first. We have seen distressed sellers sometimes get confused or don't know, and they sign multiple contracts. And it's whoever gets to the title company and executes it first will cloud the title. So get it there. And I think other states do attorney closings through attorney. So make sure you execute it. So with the title company or attorney in some states. So assignment of contract with the buyer. So there is no standard. Usually contracts, like for Texas, especially realtor states, where they've got a state contract, it's realtors who are doing it. So there isn't really an assignment of contract standard in every state. So you might need to create one. It's usually for us just a one page, but recognize that your buyer is assuming the terms of your contract. So if you negotiate a 2-week option period or due diligence period, when they sign your contract, that's their due diligence period as well. And so you need to ensure that you are giving them the time to do their due diligence as needed as well.
So my recommendation there is going to be, as Linda said, there's not a standard assignment of contract. This is one, if you know this is going to be your business or you know you're going to use it at least once, I would say. Find a knowledgeable real estate attorney, explain to him what you're looking to do, because the example Linda just gave is well, she didn't really get deep into it yet. Let's say you write up an assignment where you're assigning your rights to someone else. So you have a property under contract, you assign your rights to that contract to someone else, closing date comes and they don't perform. Well, what is to stop the person you signed a contract with from coming after you for not performing? You can hold up a piece of paper. It says, well, but look, I assigned it to this person. And if it's not written out well, you could be in trouble. So you need to make sure you have an attorney that knows what they're doing to write it up in a way that protects you.
Agreed. There you go.
Oh, look at that.
Delivered to the title company as well. It basically gives the title company the instructions on how to calculate the closings, right? Who goes on the contract, who goes on the deed, how much money gets divvied up. And so basically the instructions go, okay, much money is being brought in. This much goes to the realtors. This much goes to the title company for closing. This much goes to the wholesaler, and the seller gets the difference. So it gives them those instructions. And so your option due diligence period is their due diligence period, and then you can close and get paid. So you are putting some money into the deal. It's typically the option and earnest, and then you want to make sure that your buyer's deposit covers your option and earnest money as well. Because if they walk away, you're still on the hook on the contract, and you'd want to make sure that you're covered too.
Hey,
So
Linda, what's a
yeah,
good wholesale fee?
whatever you can negotiate. But
Yep.
typically, right, it's usually around $5,000 or $10,000
Yep.
for residential. Yeah. So marketing, how do you find these sellers? So first, what is your exit strategy, right? And obviously we're talking about wholesaling, but are you wholesaling to landlords or are you wholesaling to flippers, right? And the reason why it's important to differentiate is because it's going to determine where you do marketing, because not every, like in our city, right? We're in Austin and we've got 2 primary counties. There are 69 zip codes, and not every zip code is created equal. Some zip codes are better for long-term rentals. Some are better for flips. Some are even better for new builds or commercial. So you really need to know who is your buyer, and that will distinguish where you want to do your marketing. Once you figure that out, then it's and sorry, let me add one piece on here, because I think when people are new, they don't know this, and I didn't know this, is that if you are looking to sell to either landlords or to flippers, just think about this, right? A landlord You may have a lot of people on your list that say, yep, they are landlords, want to be landlords. But the reality is that most of them will save up the 20% to be able to buy, and they can only typically do that like once a year, once every 2 years. So they're not continuous buyers, whereas flippers use other people's money and they can usually handle multiple deals a year if the numbers work. So just bear that in mind. And then where do you want your deals, right? By understanding if you want landlords or flippers, and then you do your market analysis, it'll determine where you do your marketing. And then within those zip codes, you figure out who do you want to target, right? Do you want to target people who are facing foreclosure, people who have low credit, people who are facing divorce or probate? So you can look at and research the people who have a house that has a problem or who are in a situation that has a problem. And then you can start to get those lists and do marketing to those people. And then how do you reach them is how you do your marketing. And it can be door knocking, door hangers, it can be bandit signs, it can be direct mail, it can be cold calling, text messaging, social media, ads. So that's really how you want to plan out your marketing is who are you, like, what's your exit strategy? Where are you doing your marketing? Who you want to target? And then how, right? I've seen many, many new investors start with, I want to start with direct mail. Okay, well, but who? Oh, and then where? Right? So reverse that. Go
Hey,
ahead, Andrew.
Linda.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm chomping at the bit on this
I can
one.
tell.
So, all these people that you're going to be marketing to sell their house, they all speak English, right?
No, a
Then you're going to
veces
talk.
hablan español.
So, we have several times walked into situations with sellers, distressed sellers, people who really needed our help. They genuinely needed help. And you walk in and one of the signs that they need help is they're getting stacks of bills, stuff from creditors, letters from attorneys, tax consultants, all this. And you walk into a household where someone doesn't speak English, and guess what language all the letters are written in? And then you do what I did. This was brilliant on my part. I married someone who spoke Spanish, and you add to that was part of my criteria. Who was I marketing to? I was marketing to someone who spoke Spanish.
A Latina, you didn't even know that.
No, I didn't. I didn't know you spoke. That is true. If you do your letter and you write out explaining who you are, what you do, and your interest in their home, and then at the bottom of it you have something similar written in Spanish, guess who they're going to call? And by the way, when they call, they don't want to talk to me. They want to talk to Linda, which I get.
Exactly. Yep. Perfect. Okay. So marketing for buyers. Marketing for buyers. Again, who are your target buyers, right? So if we're going to say we want landlords or we want real estate flippers, right? Market to your list or create a marketing plan to reach them, right? So how are you going to get in front of them? Where do they reside? And typically a great way is these buyers are usually part of a real estate Facebook group. So an easy way to do that is to join groups, be active in those groups. It'd be very good if you can be that label top contributor in those groups. And then here's a ninja tip. Oh, yeah. Is that you can, in your Facebook group, there's a little magnifying glass to search inside that group. Even if you just joined the group today, you have access to search the entire history of that entire group. And if you put in the words wholesale, right, you will find every post that has the words wholesale, and you can find ones that have a lot of responses. And a lot of times they will put in their phone number and their email address, and you've created an automatic buyers list by just doing that, right? And you can reach out to them. I will say that if you send them a Facebook message, friend them, because it goes into this other bucket that most people don't even know exists or don't remember to go see it. And you need to be friends for them to see it right away. So then you can email them. And once you do a warm email, you can add them to autoresponders, which is a pre-written series of emails that go out on a schedule. And you can call them, and if they opt in, you can do like a scheduled auto text messages as well. Okay, wholesale packet. We've seen good, bad, and ugly. Sometimes it's like we'll see an email where somebody's trying to wholesale a property, and all they've got is a zip code and a purchase price, right? And that drives us bananas, right? It's already, we don't even respond. Like, we know our area well enough to know that in every zip code, what the price point should be about, to know if it's even in the area, in the range that we're trying to target. And what we found is that if somebody doesn't put that information up front, you're going to have to pull it out of them, and it's oftentimes they don't know what they're doing. They haven't done the analysis. They don't know how to negotiate it, and they definitely don't know how to present it and to negotiate it well. Any thoughts you have on a wholesale packet, Andrew?
No, I again, kind of the same thing. We've seen good and bad. I would say if you're, for example, if you're flipping houses, then your expertise needs to be figuring out what to do with that house and making it look as good as possible for potential buyers to buy it. If you're doing wholesale, it's the same thing. It's just instead of fixing up the house, you're doing a wholesale packet. And the better you can make that wholesale packet, the more that house is going to sell for, the more you're going to be able to wholesale it for, and the more people that'll be interested in it. So that's kind of your job.
I
All
actually
right.
have an
So,
example wholesale packet. Sorry, I had to
yep.
go back on mute, off mute. So basically, this was an example. I've got a template that we've created that shows our sellers exactly, our buyers exactly every time what information it is. So, we say what type, it's a flip, right? What's the ARV? What's the purchase price, repair estimate, and then information about it, as well as loan to value, appreciation, average days on market, months of inventory. And then here's another little ninja tip, right? Get it pre-approved through a lender, where possible. It makes it easier for the buyer. As a wholesaler, you make the most money when you solve the seller's problem and you show the buyer how to make money on the deal and make it easy for them. And Andrew, on this one, we'll get into the case study, but so we include pictures. You remember some of these now?
Yeah,
Um,
and
we'll
sorry,
get
go
into the
ahead.
case study because this one's in the case study. Tax information we include, and then comps,
Don't worry, we'll
right?
we'll share details of this.
Yeah, this
This
one's
is
a
an
fun one.
interesting one.
Yeah.
This one's not normal.
No. So that one is an example of the wholesale packet of one that we're going to do in just a minute. And so the thing that you need to pay attention to is when you're doing a wholesale packet is that you need to make sure that you're protected, right? So control the deal. Andrew, we've had it, for example, remember the one where some of these, they break our hearts, right? We had a seller who was, given a certain amount of time to live, and they wanted a bucket list, and we were wholesaling the deal, and we had a buyer who didn't seem to care, right? And so we now control the narrative and the conversation with our seller because we genuinely care about the seller and what they're going through, and they chose us because they had trust and faith in us. And not every buyer cares about that. They just look at it as a transaction. So we actually usually don't allow the buyer to talk to the seller unless we know them, they're a very good friend. And in those instances, we actually don't market it much. We only make phone calls to a certain number of people that we know we would want to buy it, because we care a lot about that. And then we also need to make sure that it doesn't fall through, that the deal doesn't fall through, because we make promises to the seller. So we take it very seriously. Anything you want to add on that one?
Nope. You're in a very powerful situation to be able to help people. A lot of the people that are going to reach out to you are they're reaching out, or you've reached out to them and they've responded because traditional real estate doesn't work for them.
Yep.
I think a lot of investors will argue this point. I would say 90% of the time, people should go through a realtor. It makes perfect sense.
Yep.
It's that 10% where it doesn't work. There's so much wrong with the house that it can't be sold on MLS. It can't get a traditional loan. There's all sorts of reasons. You walk into a house and someone's in there on a ventilator with a feeding tube. Well, you know what? They can't have people coming through their house doing traditional tours.
Yep.
And you've got the ability to help these people, it's a pretty good feeling. It's heartbreaking, but it's a very good feeling after you do help them.
Yep. Perfect. And I will say that the other piece, and I don't remember exactly where I put it in here, is that you need to protect yourself, right? Unfortunately, there are good investors and bad investors, and some of them might try to go around you. And I would definitely say that you should have a non-disclosure agreement, non-circumvent, non-compete. I have seen there are a couple of big wholesale groups, and they're actually in all the big cities around the nation. They do actually a very good job of building their buyers list, building their sellers list, and hustling. But what they do is they always do double closes so that both transactions can't see the other, or how much they made in between. And the other piece that we've seen is that they've gone around some of our friends, right? And behind their back, waited until it fell through and then went and got it themselves. And to us, that's very unethical, especially when you did the work, and you found the deal. So those are ways that you can control the deal as well. All right. I hope I spelled it right. Quentin Tarantula. Why is it Quentin Tarantula? Right? Did I
Yep.
spell it right? I didn't spell it right,
I
did
think
I?
you got it as close as it's going to get.
So let's talk about this case study. So this is a wholesale deal that we did. And hopefully my memory is correct, right? Is that they actually received a notice of default and were so stressed, couldn't sleep, and that they called us. And we immediately went over that night. There were other investors actually planning to come in the morning. You remember that, Andrew?
Yep.
And do you remember
They
what they
were.
told them?
They were really nice and really friendly. They told them they'd be there. They would only be there for 30 minutes, and that they would give them an offer and that they could accept it on the spot, or the offer would no longer be good.
And they would lose their house, right? We see a lot of investors talk down and demean people who are in bad situations. And I think that's wrong. But we went there, we built rapport, right? We talked to them. And I remember sitting in the living room with them and really connecting with them. And then all of a sudden I looked over at the
Fish tank.
mantle
Yeah.
and I was like, is that a tarantula? And they said, yes. And the tarantula's name was what?
Quentin.
Quentin
Quentin
Tarantula,
Tarantula.
which is why we have a picture of a tarantula in here. And I was like, whoo, okay. So obviously I connected with the wife, Andrew connected with the husband, and they were so grateful to us. It was alive. Yes, it was
Yes,
alive.
it was alive when we got there, and it was still alive after Linda saw it.
Right. um, but Andrew, why do I have a picture of a Flying V guitar?
So the gentlemen, they had to sell their house, and it was a bad situation, had to do with health problems. They had a backup plan. They actually had done very well. They bought the house at a very low price. It went up greatly in value, and the opportunity to move further out, live in a similar size house, maybe even a bigger house, just further out that was closer to where they were going to be working. So it actually all worked out. They just needed to sell.
Yeah.
The entire house that wasn't filled with exotic animals was filled with exotic stringed instruments. And I'm talking about 2 and 3 string things that you would see like in Nepal. It was like, it was instruments I had never seen before. But as we're sitting on the couch talking and we start to get into real estate, I look over and in the corner, and look, I grew up, you can't tell because I shaved my head, but I grew up during the hairband era. And one big thing during the 80s was the flying V guitar that rock guitarists played. And there's one sitting in the corner. And I asked the guy about it. He pulled it out and we just started playing it. And it was kind of cool because, and it's funny, I'm in my office right now and it's actually sitting here. Hang on. Um, it's, I know this is so professional getting off camera. Let's see if it'll show up. Yep, there it is.
You got to put it in front of your face.
Yeah.
In
Yeah, it's
front of
still not
you.
liking it. Anyway,
Yeah.
The point is these people were so appreciative of how we handled the situation and that we were professional. We asked them what they needed. We worked around their schedule, their timing. We weren't pushy with them at all. As I was leaving, the guy reached back into the corner and handed me the guitar. He said, "Here, I want you to have this."
Yeah.
And first of all, I got kind of choked up and I said, I can't accept that. I appreciate it, but you guys have a lot going on. Take care. He goes, no, he said, I'm going to sleep well tonight for the first time in months. He said, that is invaluable to me. He said, please take this. So now I have a purple, again, I'm sorry you can't see it well. It's a purple lucite flying V guitar. And I do know that our middle son took it to school one day for show and tell, and he literally won show and tell because who else has a purple lucite see-through flying V guitar? Anyway,
Yeah. We've found that when you help homeowners, they give you gifts, which is not expected.
well, and so to back up and one reason to do this is money. And for a lot of us, it's whether it's a job or an investment so we can make money, and maybe you're tithing it to a church or donating it to a good cause, whatever you're doing with the money, that doesn't matter. It's you need to make money. It's important. How you go about it can make the difference. And we've gotten some gifts, but not many. But the one thing we have gotten is we've had several people. I mentioned that rat infested house. The woman literally looked at me and said, I feel like you were an angel sent to us. And I told her, I said, first of all, I'm definitely not an angel. And I feel almost guilty someone saying that, but then you realize you're doing something that someone else is not willing to do.
Yeah.
And in their eyes, that makes you an angel. I guess it's all relative. So
Well, and
puts you in
it's
a
the
very powerful
position.
position.
When you put yourself in the position, you can help a lot of people, and it puts you in a position where you can help people and not necessarily always need to make money off of it.
Right.
So that one was a 2-week sale. We did sell it to someone who wanted to keep it as a rental, and they apologized for the condition of their house. And honestly, Andrew and I looked at it and we're like, "Your house is beautiful, even though it had tons of boxes and stuff." Oh, now you want to show it? You
Yeah,
want
I
to show it all?
gotta show it.
There
That's
you go.
cool.
There you go. Um, so yeah, so we were able to sell it pretty quickly to somebody who could, take it in because they had nice floors, they had granite countertops, right? Like we didn't care about the stuff that was in it. And so it was a win-win-win. And we literally just gave them their price because fortunately they were very realistic about it. We also do short-term leasebacks in a lot of scenarios. Thank you, Debbie. Yeah, so we do short-term leasebacks in a lot of scenarios where, especially in Texas, we do fast foreclosures. That doesn't give them time to find a place, put down a deposit, do a credit review, and move before closing. And so we can leverage something that realtors can't really offer, right? Because they're not the one in the position of holding the contract. But us as investors, we can again solve the problem, and short-term leaseback is a great way to do that. And we can get into short-term leasebacks, I think, in more webinars.
Yeah,
But it's a
let's
good one.
let's definitely take that as a something to do separately is the whole sales process.
Yeah.
Because there's things you can do to make yourself more attractive to sellers that people just miss. And a
Well,
short-term
maybe
lease
what we can
back is,
do is one about how investors like are different than realtors, what we can offer that realtors can't,
you
our
could be
unique
the
selling
bad,
proposition.
you could be the bad wholesaler, and I'll be the good one, and we'll compare.
Oh,
Deal?
I'll win.
Yeah,
Fortunately,
I'll
I have a
win.
4-year-old that thinks that I'm the strongest, I'm the fastest, I'm the smartest. Like it's amazing for your ego. All right. So I just called this bank flip gone wrong. Do you remember? Oh my God. And this was a wholesale deal. This one
So
was a crazy story, a crazy
yeah,
story.
so
So
first
it
of
is
all,
more complex.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think most wholesales and flip, just most wholesale deals are for, I would say the lower to middle price range in your market. That's generally going to be the truth. It's going to be the lower end. This house, you can't generally tell. It's partially the house and partially where it is. This is a three-story house in the highest end, one of the highest end neighborhoods in West Austin. To give you an idea, I just pulled up the house right across the street from it, similar size, just sold for 3.7 million. And when we were there, at the time, the new University of Texas football coach, who I'm sure was getting paid 4 to 5 million a year, had just bought the house down the street. Actually, hopefully he rented because he wasn't there for long. Um, yeah, this was a higher end home. This was this was interesting. Yeah, so first of all, it was bank owned. I will tell you, you'll hear that banks don't want to own houses. This is the poster child for why banks should not own houses. When we got there, if memory serves, they had already owned the house for 6 years. And during that time, they were actually out of Lubbock, Texas, not Austin. They
Hmm.
didn't know our building codes, our rules here, and they hired people from a distance to come fix up this multi-million-dollar home. Um, just like we can have happen with us, if we're fixing up a house, not all contractors do what they say they're going to do. And if you're not there inspecting it and know what you're doing, it doesn't go well. So they had people start to fix it up and do a bad job, or they had people start to fix it up and fail to get permits, which you can't do in this town. You will get red tagged. They'll
Hmm.
shut you down. This went on for 6 years. The eye opener to us was, and again, this was a while ago. We looked up the taxes on this house, and I want to say the taxes at the time, this was like 10 years ago. I want to say the taxes on this house were like 20,000 a year, and the bank was
Yeah.
paying it every year. And
Plus
then
insurance.
and then in the mid plus insurance, and then the middle of it while this was going on, the house flooded
Right.
because they had a drainage problem.
Yep.
So this is again the poster child for why banks don't want to own a house. It's just unusual that it was a multi-million-dollar home.
Well, and if my memory serves, they listed it and put it on the market when they had permits that were still open.
Yeah, so I don't know how much I could talk all day about this one. It was amazing. So first of all, a friend of ours found this, and he found it. Yeah, I think he made a wrong turn down the street, to be honest, because there's no reason you would be looking in this neighborhood for a wholesale deal. I think he was just looking at pretty houses, and you see the lawn is nicely manicured in this picture, but when he got there, the grass was so high that he almost missed the bank, basically the real estate sign saying that it was for sale because the grass was so high. And you can't do that in this neighborhood. It's too nice of a neighborhood. And that's what was going on. When he pushed the grass and the weeds away and could see the sign, he kind of chuckled. He called the realtor and found out that it was owned by a bank where the bank president and the guy who drove by and saw this, his father-in-law, were golf buddies.
Yep.
They played golf together.
Sometimes it's
And
not what you know.
it's who you know.
Yeah.
And he called him and said, "What the heck is going on with this?" And they were almost begging us to try and figure it out and take it off their hands. One of the challenges with this one is that in all the construction, this is again why you don't have a bank that doesn't know how to flip houses, or let's say you're a wholesaler. If you're a wholesaler, you should know a bit about construction, but you don't have to be an expert on it. You let the next person worry about that. The bank was hiring people to do construction. This house had, if my memory serves, it had four very large bedrooms uh, on the second floor, all with 10 to 12-foot ceilings. Each one had its own custom bath with custom tile work all the way to the ceiling. It was beautiful stuff. And oh, we got pictures. They had done all the drywall, put all the walls in, all the tile work in. They never got the drywall inspected to make sure that it was screwed in properly. They tiled but never had the plumbing inspected, which means how do you know that the plumbing's done right behind the walls? It was kind of ridiculous what they had done.
Yeah, you can see here where the sheetrock is gone at the bottom because of when it got wet.
Yeah, and the floors look terrible in these pictures because it had flooded. Yeah, it was an
Yeah,
amazing
this
house.
was this was how they finished it without completing all the permits. And so we solved the buyer's problem, not only with the permits, because what we found out is that you could do a camera for the plumbing, and you could use a little machine that helps determine where the studs are and the nails in those in the sheetrock to be able to pass the permitting process. But then the other one was figuring out the drainage system, because they should have built a retaining wall and didn't, right? Was that, yeah. So we had to solve those problems for the buyer. But we did. Um, as we said, they tried to flip it, open permits, making the contract assignable. Do you remember this?
Yeah, so the contract was written by, well, the bank had an attorney write up the contract. And I know I said earlier in Texas, unless it says otherwise, all contracts are assignable. This contract, the bank had an attorney write up. And I can tell you right now, they paid an attorney a lot of money. And the attorney took a Texas Real Estate Commission contract and copied it almost verbatim, except he added in that it wasn't assignable.
But we were
And
trying to wholesale it.
and we had to go to them and say, we need this changed, or you will be stuck with this house for another year, have fun paying taxes, insurance
But
on it.
remember, they didn't listen to us. It was because our buyer's lender, again, this is like, it's who you know, our buyer's lender, what was it? He golfed with them too at the
Yeah,
city
he
and called them up and
basically,
said, make this contract assignable.
so here's what's funny. He said to make it assignable. They made it assignable. We assigned it to him. He wrote us our wholesale fee. He owns the house, but then he doesn't use his own money. He borrows money in order to purchase homes like this to fix them up. And he actually borrowed money from the bank that had owned the house for 6+ years. It's you
It
just
was
you
the
can't even
same
make this
bank,
stuff up.
got the same property again. It
Yeah,
just blew our mind.
Linda, and I don't know if again, I don't know what you were going to cover or wanted to cover, but one thing I want to call out here is Linda and I have a lot of experience flipping houses. We've flipped houses, we've built houses, we've added on. Linda had this crazy idea of moving houses, which worked out gloriously. Um, we're pretty experienced. We know what to do. This house at the time was beyond our scope. It would have been too much of a stretch for us. For example, we didn't know how to use a metal detector on walls to justify and hire the right engineer to show, yes, the drywall was done correctly. We didn't know the right process for finding the right plumber to camera behind the wall so we didn't have to open every wall up. I'll give you a third one. You can't see behind this house, but there's a power line and there's houses on either side. There's a rooftop deck on this house on the third floor that was designed for a hot tub. We couldn't figure out how to get a hot tub up there. The person that we sold it to, that we wholesaled it to, not only had all that knowledge and experience, there's the rooftop, there's a built-in grill, but not where the camera is actually where the hot tub would go. This guy had the knowledge and experience to have a crane come in and lower I'm talking a large crane, come in and lower the hot tub down from above. I understand all the neighbors were outside sipping wine, watching, waiting for a catastrophe to happen, but it worked out great. But my point of all this is, let's say you're into flipping houses and you come up with one that's, you think, wow, this is a little beyond us. Let someone else do it. Wholesale it to them. Everybody does well. You're on mute, sweetie.
So a couple of ninja tips. And I think we've kind of already touched on some of these, is you'll make the most money when you solve the seller's problem and show the buyer how to make money. Not everybody's trained, right? Not all investors know how to calculate it and do the deal. And somebody was just asking if we can share how to run the numbers on a deal. And I was actually planning that for next week. So I don't know how much we'll get through because doing a flip is a lot of pieces. And then we might have to break it down into part one and part two, because the construction by itself is a lot. I think that's what we need to do because it's too much to cover. So we'll do part one and part two. So get the deal pre-approved by a lender is another little ninja tip, because people are more likely, and we've seen this over and over again, especially in commercial, when a bank or a lender has said, yes, I've reviewed the deal and it's a good deal and I would lend on the deal, it gives so much more confidence and credibility for the buyer. And then put together a professional wholesale packet. We shared with you ours. Andrew, any other ninja tips that come to mind?
I do have one. You touched on earlier what a wholesale fee could be. And look on that last one we showed you. And again, that's an outlier. That's a very unusual one. We had someone complain that they felt we had made too much as a wholesale fee. Can we share what we made on that?
Which one?
On Stanford?
Oh, I don't exactly
So
remember. I think it was like
so that was
120,000.
Yeah, so that was a 52 or 53,000. I think it was $53,000 wholesale fee.
Yeah.
And we split it with the gentleman who found it because he had way less experience. He didn't know what to do, where to even start. So we told him we'd split it with him, and we both walked away happy, and we're still friends to this day. So splitting a $52,000 wholesale fee is unusual. What's interesting is someone was going around complaining that, well, they shouldn't be able to make that much, and a local, very well-known real estate attorney stood up and said they should be able to make whatever they can on it. This is America. And everybody did well on that. And what's interesting is the guy that bought it from us, the one we wholesaled it to, actually stood up and said, actually, I'm the one who bought it. I paid the wholesale fee, and I hope they bring the next one. That gentleman made 200,000 on this deal. So it's all about when you're wholesaling something, if you try and charge people too much of a wholesale fee and you don't leave enough what they call meat on the bone, like if someone's going to be flipping it, you wholesale it to them and they end up losing money, they can't be a customer for you in the future. If you develop a reputation for wholesaling and charging too much or not sharing numbers that are accurate, that reputation will follow you. We tend to wholesale stuff that everybody does well on, and then they want to keep coming to us. And that's what we'd rather do. So that's my ninja tip.
Good ninja tip. I like it.
Thanks.
All right. So that wraps up today's presentation. And not only are we learning investing in different ways, but also if you're investing in a deal and looking for more deals, make sure that you reach out to us. This is our contact information, and get on our weekly newsletters by just registering for this webinar and watching it. You'll be on the newsletter. And then make sure that you guys can reach out to us if you want to invest with us, invest in some deals that we bring to the table, or want to learn more. What do you want to learn? So next week, we will be doing a residential remodel, creating value in a residential remodel, and selling for a profit on the retail market. You remember this one?
I do, because we had our son break the tile up on the floor.
Yeah, this was our very first rehab. And, us, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it big. And yeah, we did it big. We moved the entire kitchen.
There's a window that looks into the room next to it, which tells you that this house had issues.
Yep. So as I wrote it up, we'll go through how to find your deals, how to estimate repairs, how to calculate the numbers, find funding, manage construction, market, and sell your property. That's a lot. So we're going to break it up into two parts, so that we can, I guess we'll have to figure it out, maybe three, but definitely two parts. So next week, we're going to focus on finding your deal, and doing your deal analysis, right? Because that's huge. When you estimate your repairs, and then that becomes your budget versus your construction, is a very different scenario. So we're going to break it up. So make sure you join us for that. And thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate you. That's what we got.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you.